Hey everyone, my name is Leighton Harmon. Uh, I'm making an introductory. I was making a video earlier, but I just felt out it was going too long. I want to talk about my struggles with mental health and my journey with it. Um, I hope I don't go too long, and so I'll start it around the age 5 or 6. Um, I was diagnosed with ADHD and OCD. I had a hard time concentrating in the classroom, hard time sitting. I acted out with behavior issues, and my mom, had me fought for me to have an IEP, have more one-on-one time with support teachers, so I wouldn't be distracted in the classroom, and I could actually try have a better chance at focusing and concentrating on the material that was given to me at hand. This happened through my entire grade school year, even the college, because my mom had to advocate for me, and I'll try to get to that in a bit. But those were my first diagnoses with mental health and neurological issues that interfered with my ability to concentrate, be stable. I remember my first experience with how I realized how bad my OCD was. I was either in second or third grade, and I did my homework one night, and then I went to school the next day. And when the teacher told us to get our folders out, our homework, I opened my folder up. It wasn't there, and I got the appropriate disciplinary actions, which was what they called a homework card, which in retrospect is not really a big deal. But at the time, when you're handed that and you're disciplined as a kid, it's a big world. It's a big deal because you try your best, and then when you did something right and you just misplaced something, um, you know, for me that was a big deal. So after that happened, and this went through on the rest of my high school, my grade school, and my high school career. Um, I would get done with homework, and I would check my folder several dozen times. I kid you not, because I was afraid of it being misplaced or lost. Because I did not want to get a zero or a homework card. Uh, because I've already experienced to me, and that was how I deal with what I thought was, I look back at it, and now I think about it, is that that was a traumatic event for me. I was so routine oriented, and I think it got worse to where when I struggled with adapting with change, and this will make sense later as I tell you about my later diagnosis. So flat, I still had struggles in the classroom, behavioral problems, acting out, not being able to sit still. This was a distraction. The teachers called my mom, and I had to have the appropriate accommodations and more one-on-one, more emotional support from teachers. This one in the 7th or 8th grade too. I had an emotional support teacher for the first period, 2 periods of the day. She would help me organize, my binder into each subject category, like science, math, reading, social studies, you name it, because I needed that extra support because I had learning disabilities as well that I still struggle with today because I have a hard time concentrating. In the workplace, I had to have directions and instructions repeated to me several times, not just once. And then I make mistakes a lot. Something as simple as even simple paperwork, but I still kept making the same. I still keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and um, and that increases my anxiety and everything, and my ADHD, which interferes with. That's because of what happens. But that was a struggle for mine. But those were the two main ones. I remember being medicated and everything. Um, I went to the doctors all the time. My mom drugged me. She knew something was wrong. Be outside the ADHD and the OCD. She just knew something was wrong. And again, I'll get to that formal diagnosis later. That happened in life that I would have helped me had I gotten it at a much younger age. So, I struggled with interactions with my peers, especially around 13, 14. As a young boy, you start looking at girls a little bit differently. Um, I pushed girls away with my because of my social behavior that I look back was inappropriate. A lot of times, instead of forming a friendship first, I would just immediately ask the girl out. Not understanding how relationships, friendships work. I didn't get it. When I was rejected, and that gave me low self esteem because I had no confidence in myself. And in retrospect, it wasn't them necessarily rejecting me, but it's just because they didn't know me. But I didn't understand that. I took that as rejection that, oh, I'm ugly, I at the time I wasn't, I was one of the smallest kids in class, and my whole class, and that affected my self confidence and my self esteem a lot greatly. And I look back, there was a lot of girls. When I said not a lot, but there was girls that were actually interested in me, but I kind of like pushed them away because they wanted to get to know me. But I immediately asked them out because my thought process was, probably because being conditioned by movies, and I just thought that, when you like someone that, you immediately just ask them out, but that's not how the real world works. But I looked back and I said, okay, which the diagnosis I will reveal later makes sense of how my social interactions were. But 10th grade, though, is when a lot of my psychiatric issues happened. So it's the middle of the 10th grade year. I started developing problems sleeping, and this affected me greatly. I was missing school. My mom was taking me to the doctors. I developed insomnia, anxiety, depression, and I was getting sick at night. Like I would literally, because I wasn't sleeping well. I got up the one night, and not the one night, but several nights, and I was throwing up. Um, that was due to the depression, the anxiety, and the insomnia, and it was causing behavioral problems. The second half of my 10th grade year, I had to be what was called homebound. So that was when a teacher from the school, like an emotional support teacher, she would come out, bring my schoolwork to me, and help me with it, so that way it could be handed in. I still got my credits and everything in my assignments, so I still did my schoolwork, but I did it from home. Um, During that summer, my mom was still taking me even to more doctors because she saw how much it was affecting me. Um, I self isolated a lot. I didn't go out. I didn't want to be seen because I felt so bad, and like the depression caused me to self isolate. I stayed home. Like when I didn't go out to any sporting events, no social events. Like I was really isolated. Now I had my friends, circle of friends, but I didn't even go around them. I just couldn't. I just didn't feel like I wanted to be seen. I felt so awful about myself. And that's what happens when you struggle with depression, even to this day. And the more I reach out and see other people who struggle with it, like they can't get out of bed, they don't want to be seen, they self isolate, and it makes a lot of sense, especially later on for diagnoses. Finally, though, we found the right medication for me to help with my sleep, and I was put on Seroquel around the age of 16, maybe right before my 16th birthday. And my 11th grade year started off well. My mom had to help me get accommodated for school. We had 9 periods through the day. I went through 5, and eventually I went back to going 6 periods. But it was basically an accommodation I got. Still did other classes, but like gym class, like I would go to the gym in town, and I'd get credit for that. But then my depression got really bad again that following January or February. Um, I almost went inpatient. It was that bad. I started getting sick again, throwing up, couldn't keep my food down. Um, that was the first time I remember becoming suicidal. Well, I mean, I was writing out. I wouldn't say what you would call a suicide note, but I was writing out things to leave behind to my family and friends. So I guess you could say it was a suicide note, but I got that depressed. I just thought people were better off. But I made a recovery, and I finished the school year. And then my senior year happened. I developed more. I guess looking back, this is my first real experience with suicidal ideation, and I just, it got bad for me. I graduated though. Everything was good as it can be. And I remember I always look back and I was like, I know something's not right. Something's not right with me, on top of the diagnosis I already had. And I looked into more about what autism was. This was when I was 18. This is the summer after I graduated. And I said, Mom, do you think it's possible that I have this? And, my mom, she's like, I think it's possible. So about 4 or 5 years, going through, many doctors, seeing what was wrong, if I fit. That was about 22 or 23. I was finally formally diagnosed with autism. You look back and like, well, it all makes sense now. Why, trouble with social interactions with my peers, maybe inappropriate behavior, emotional outbursts, getting when I say getting into fights, I mean like I had like conflict with some classmates to where I'd get act out, maybe get into a small fight, nothing serious where anyone like severely beat each other, but just small uh, altercations. But it was still hard for me to process things healthy, and that caused me social behavior. That if I had the formal diagnosis, had the proper intervention during grade school, I would have been able to understand social cues better a lot than I understand now, which I do still struggle with. But so that happened. I got formally diagnosed at 22, 23. Um, I won't go into specific details, but I had several jobs through my life that was on the books, but I had a hard time maintaining employment. I had emotional breakdowns where I snapped on uh, a boss one time, and and it led to my termination because I had trouble regulating my emotions and my anger. Another time, social cues were a struggle for me. Just socially inappropriate behavior, nothing like detrimental, but enough to that wouldn't be inappropriate in the workplace. I got fired and let go from there. Because of my OCD, I think things are funny, and I sometimes forget. Like I obsess over things, and I forget to, like you got to step back. You got to know your audience. You got to know when is the time and place, and I struggled with that. Time when I was at a factory, you know, this one time I made a joke to someone. They took offense to it, and I take full responsibility. But they told the management. Management said, "Well, I got to report it to HR." I said, "I understand. You just got to do what you got to do. I apologize." But if you're in a factory setting, if you ever worked in one, you know that there's a lot of like, and it's both men and women that when I was working with, we had a lot of what you would call locker room talk, and it's not to make an excuse, but just you gotta know your audience. That was the advice my manager gave me. He just said, I'm not saying what you did was wrong, but he goes, just know your audience. So because again, a factory setting, most of the time people are going to say things, but you got to be mindful. And that's what I struggled with. I eventually lost my job because I made another joke to someone. What was funny about that particular incident is someone else had said it. It was me repeating it, but I had said to the person I was working with, I said, "You won't believe." I can't remember what the guy's name was. We'll just say Joe. "You won't believe what Joe said." And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, what'd he say?" I actually stopped and thought about it for a moment and used my better judgment momentarily. I was like, "No, I better not." She goes, "No, tell me." And then my better judgment went out the window, and I told her anyway. And then she got offended by it, and she went and told management because I had already a prior offense or report. I got let go. I did not handle it well as they were walking me out, and they let me go. Got a little bit of a verbal altercation that led to management threatened to get police involved. It wasn't. I mean, like nothing physical happened, but it was the emotional regulation. And I can relate to the autism, and I take full responsibility for that. It's just I had a hard time, with social cues, social interaction, social behavior in the workplace settings, that it's cost me several jobs. But I found a recent job last year. Started working with another job place that had was with adults with disabilities once more. I had already had prior experience. Um, that's the ADHD. I lost my thought process right there. See, I was going fine for a few months. I started in March of 2025, and at the end of May, um, I lost my medical assistance, and I've had that. I had that for about 20 years. And again, the autism, the routine, you take something like that that's big that you change with, you struggle with adapting, and that was a huge thing for me because I always had access to my medications. Um, if I can be open, I was deemed disabled by Social Security after graduating my high school, so I was on SSI, and I would get it if I wasn't working or in between jobs. But I had that as a safety net, and that was like a whole big, uh, that was a huge loss for me. And anytime anyone, if you whether it's death or loss just of a friendship, anytime you experience loss, it's traumatic. For me, that was a huge change. It affected me greatly. I obsessed over it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Uh, and I had just lost my dad to cancer about 2 years prior to that. My mom had already passed away from cancer. Uh, After her death, I was inpatient 2 times because I was severely depressed. And that a few months after her dying in 2017, my uncle died of a drug overdose. It just seems like I was hit with loss after loss that year, and I had to go inpatient twice. And then in 2022, when my dad had his cancer, I became so overwhelmed because and mind you, I'd do it all over again, taking care of my dad. But I felt there was going to be, I felt like if and when he died from the cancer, I was going to be blamed for it. And I just had, I had already had a suicide attempt when I was 25 in 2014 after losing my job. This was another place where I had an emotional breakdown. I went off with my boss and I was let go. Again, my fault, my responsibility, that I take full responsibility for. Um, so I had already had one suicide attempt. But flash forward back to after I lost my SSI, uh, that was a big deal for me. And then I really found out how much my ailments and disabilities really do affect me. I was going several weeks at a time because I was so obsessed over it, and I couldn't stop thinking about how much and it still does to this day, how much it affects me because of the benefits you get when you have like medical assistance, like transportation. It's not just the supplemental income; it's the medical assistance, the transportation services that you once had if you needed to go to an appointment. So like my biggest stressor is if and when my car dies, how will I get around? Like that's a big like, you don't stop ruminating, obsessing. I think that's part of the autism, the obsessive compulsive disorder. So getting back to it, my depression got so bad and I obsessed so much. I wasn't showering and bathing for 2 3 weeks at a time. I wouldn't change my clothes. Like I just got so emotionally overwhelmed and just like so taxed that when I got home from work, all I did was lay down. I finally This past February I went inpatient because it was getting that bad. I went inpatient. I was in there for about 9 or 10 days. I got out, felt all right. Went back to work for another 1 or 2 weeks, and then I was experiencing the worst experience I ever had. I remember every day I was starting to feel I had outer body experiences. I was having first and third person's point of view, like I was already in my body, but also watching myself from another person's perspective. I literally saw time as I know it slow down, and I saw like a clock. Literally, I saw a clock tick down. And like the only thing I could relate it to is like the show. I think it's called 24, and I heard the clock ticking down. Like it was like that bad. I felt detached from reality. Everything I felt like everything around me wasn't real. It increased my anxiety, increased my suicidal ideation. I took on risk-taking behaviors that I'll not explain all of them, but the one I even like turned to drugs because I had a hard time coping, and I realized if I didn't take action because I was already having suicide ideations. I was thinking about jumping off a bridge or overdosing because I already had one overdose suicide attempt before, and I went back and I went inpatient for 7 weeks. Maybe I'll talk about my inpatient stays in another video, but I want to just talk about my mental health and my experience and how I struggle in this one. So I got out after 7 weeks again at a different place, and then I came home. I was home for about 6 days. Suicidal ideation still there. Anxiety was still great. When I say great, I mean bad. Like it was greatly terrible, if that makes sense. I went back inpatient again. I was there for 23 or 24 days. That particular place was no help at all. But I got out. I came home on a Friday. I actually felt good. I actually applied for another job and I got hired. And that Friday I was good. Saturday morning I was good. I did a couple things around the house. But by that Saturday night, I developed my suicidal and anxiety got to me so bad again. And then Sunday, I was so isolated. I wasn't talking to anyone once again. Monday, when I say wasn't, that's contradictory. Because Monday I went out and was going to have lunch with a friend, but I was seriously considering suicide once more. When I was inpatient too, at my second inpatient stay of the year, I tried hanging myself while there. And then at my third inpatient stay, I tried strangling myself on 5 occasions, one of which that the staff became aware of, and I had to be placed under supervision. That my anxiety has gotten that bad, and regulating emotions too with the autism, along with other things. I went inpatient a fourth time for about 5 weeks. Um, like I said, I was getting ready to start another job somewhere, and my anxiety, I still wasn't right. I struggled being able to just hold it down, and I didn't even start that job. Um, and then I started self harming myself, like skin picking, cutting myself. I would hit myself if I was in extreme distress. I would slam my head, which I still struggle with and do to this day. Slam my head against the wall. Um, when I get upset, if I misplace something such as my glasses or my wallet, I go into maladaptive thinking. I go to worst case scenario. It's there's no gray area. It's either black or white, and I just think about killing myself because I can't handle change. I can't handle routine changes. Like I'm so like that again, like losing the medical assistance and the SSI. Like that messed with me because I always figured I was gonna have that, and um, it wasn't due to I didn't lose it to medical improvement. I lost it due to like an inheritance I received, and um, that could have been handled a lot better, but I was honest and I reported about it. But it's still messed with me. And then speaking of routine and changes, when I worked at Sam's Club one time, job was fine, but it was the schedule that I struggled with because they basically had me on a flex schedule or a swing shift. Like I'd go in one day from 1 to 9, and I'd be there till 10. Went home, and then I'd have to be in by 5 o'clock, so I'd wake up about 3:30. For a person with autism, who's so routine oriented and struggles with changes like that, I had a hard time keeping up, and I eventually had to quit for the sake of my mental health. Along with that, so those are my experiences that I've had with mental health. I'm in the process of filing for SSDI. I just my anxiety's gotten that bad. I still struggle with things, and the thing that I'm hoping to get out of this is maybe creating a broader support system. Because I see a lot of people on social media through Instagram and Facebook who also have disabilities who are advocating, you know, for those who also struggle, and it's like I kind of want to be a part of that because I don't want to feel alone. Like I stopped going around my best friend. Not anything he did. I can't. I feel ashamed, and I can't even look him in the eye. And that's my best friend, and he's supportive and just wants me to be okay, do what I have to do. But it's I don't even go. I don't even go out and socialize. I isolate a lot. I struggle getting up out of bed. I still struggle with like self care, with like bathing, changing my clothes, and it's embarrassing to admit that. But I have experienced and saw others who struggle with the same thing say they experience that as well. Like they go a while without a shower, and it's embarrassing to admit, but the brain's like any other organ. When it starts shutting down, malfunctioning, I mean, it really does affect your day to day life. Um, and I anytime I leave the house, I feel a sense of impending doom. Something's going to go wrong. That increases my anxiety and my suicidal ideation. I have panic attacks while I'm in the store and I had to go to the bathroom or find a place to get away from the crowd of people to try to sit down. It probably takes 10 or 15 minutes to alleviate the symptoms to manage, and that's like kind of like how it affects me in my everyday life. It's gotten that bad to where it's interfering with my ability to stay stable. And like right now, you might see me in this video, and it's a small glimpse. But you have your good days, and then your bad days when the symptoms become that severe, you notice that how much it really interferes and impacts with you daily. But that's my journey. That's my struggles with mental health that I've had. Uh, I've experienced a lot of trauma. I'll hopefully get into that in another video. I started experimenting with writing poetry. I've always been good at that. I don't even do that all the time though, because it takes so much emotional energy out of me sometimes to think to write, and like I stopped doing a lot of hobbies that I enjoy, like video games, watching sports, going around my friends and watching my niece and nephews at the sporting events. Like I become so isolated because of the depression, the suicidal ideation, self harm, and the anxiety that I just it's interfering with my day-to-day life to be able to just, cope and manage with the symptoms from my conditions. And I'm not trying to make that as what defines me. I'm just opening up about my experiences and struggles with those mental health things I have. um but that's where I'll get, hopefully I can talk more about, the mental health system, where I think it needs improvement, healthcare, um, access to transportation, reading some of my poems. I just want to be an advocate, hopefully, for the mental health community, especially those who struggle with mental illness and the symptoms that come from it. And those who, feel so bad that they're not even able to pull down a job, because it does affect us. We don't a lot of times some people will be ignorant and think that we're just living off the system, and it's far from the case. Our symptoms get so out of control we cannot, regulate ourselves that well, and it's embarrassing if we do feel guilty, ashamed of it when we shouldn't be, because it's a no fault illness. But um, I'll get into that eventually. But that was an introductory to what I struggle with, my symptoms, how long I've had them for, and my experiences with them. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I appreciate, the support, any feedback, maybe people's experiences with it as well, what they've encountered and experienced and struggled with during, with their mental health and what the symptoms that they have. So I just wanted to make that introduction again. A lot of times I repeat myself. I'm Leighton Harmon, and that's my experience with mental health.